this video is about the PLC data registers. Now we know that we have a lot of information around us, there are a lot of information in industry which needs to be stored and processed. Like we have in our analog world, we have the temperature of a furnace, we have pressure lines, we have a tank level that need to be stored and processed. So how to store information in a PLC? For that we have to use PLC data register. So very quickly, they are used to store the information. PLC data register is used to store the information. Information can be any. For example, for instance, it can be the number of bottles produced in a conveyor line. It can be the temperature of furnace. It can be a tank level or the pressure. It can be the flow of liquid in pipes. So we need to control this analog parameters like temperature, level, and flow. So how to control that? First, we will convert this analog values into digital values that we will process in the PLC, and then we'll control accordingly. So we have different types of data register in our PLC. Let's see very quickly. First is the general data register, which ranges from D0 to D407. Now here I'm talking about Delta DVP14SS. So in that we have approximately 408 data registers which are general. Now I'll tell you what does this general means. Next we have latch data registers, and then we have special data registers. Now in general data register, the information is lost after PLC repowered. It means what are the information it contains, it will store it until the PLC is on, and when there is a power failure or when PLC goes to stop mode and then comes back to run mode, the information will get lost. So we have to use data register very carefully. Next is latch data register. As its name suggests, information doesn't lost after PLC repowered. So this data register we can use to store the information as long as we want. Now to remove the information from this latch data register, we have to reset that. Now how to do that, we'll see in the subsequent programs. Next is we have special data register. Now these special data registers are those which manufacturer use to store some special information about the PLC. It can be the version of PLC, it can be the name of the company of a PLC, it can be the number of input-output it's stored, it can be the scan time of a PLC. So the special information which are dedicated to the particular PLC is stored in the special data register. So now next, let's see how to work on this data register, how that data register can help us to make our program more better and flexible. Okay, now we are back to the software WPLSoft. In this, we'll see some application of data register. So let's first take an example in which we have to count and store the number of time our input X4 has been on. So let's take an input LDX4. Now we have to count number of time this command has been true. So we'll put a command INC, that means increment D0, like this. Now this INC stands for increment. It will increment D0 by 1 every time this has been on. But here we have to be we need to make slight change. We have to add LDP in front of D. We have to write LDP. Now what does it mean? You will see a small arrow here. This means it's the rising edge of this X4. Now what is this rising edge? For example, if I press X4, the output will be continuously on until I release it. And we have a scan time in this PLC which keeps on checking the state of this X4. So if I use X4, LDX4 instead of LDPX4, there is many chances that because of debouncing effect, this value increases abruptly and it will give some garbage value. So we'll use LDPX4. So let's go to online. Now you have X4 in front of you. Now when I turn on X4 in our panel by just pressing it once, we'll see D1. When I press it again, it will D2. When I press D3, D4, D5, D6, D7. I have pressed 7 times. So it has increased 7 times. But as this is my general data register, if I go to off mode or to stop mode, this value will be erased. You can see here K0. When I go back to run mode again, and if I move some more values, it will get off when the PLC in the stop mode. So to prevent that, we have seen in our presentation how we can store the value. For that, I'll use that register, let's say increment D450. Now the value in this data register will be remain if I even turn off the PLC. So now let's go to run again. So now I'm incrementing 8 times. Now when I turn it off, when I put in the stop mode, the value remains same. It will remain K8 inside here. That's how the latch register works. Now let's take an example. Let's take a situation in which we are having a room in which we are having 2 sensors. One is X4 and one is connected at X5. The X4 is counting the number of people coming into the room, and X5 is counting the number of people going outside the room. So we have to count the number of people which are inside the room. So for that, X4 will be incrementing this data register, and X5, which will be here, it will decrement this data register. So for decrement, we have to use command DEC. INC for increment, DEC for decrement. So let's compile it and send it to the PLC. Okay, so initially the data is 8, as I've told you. Now if I have to reset this data, I have to do it by another command reset. I'll show it later on. So let's say when I press X5, you can see the data is being decremented. When I press X4, the data is being incremented. Now let's take another input in which we want data to be reset. So we'll take another input, let's say LDX0. Now to reset this data, we have to write a code RST space D0. Now this RST D0 will reset the value of data register to 0, K0. Okay, so initially we have K8. Now when I press X0, you can see the data has been reset. Oops, sorry, I have took D0 instead of D45. So let's move to D450 and go back to online. Okay, now when I press X0, you can see the data has been reset to 0. Again, I can increment, I can decrement the values, but the data won't get reset when I stop the PLC. It will only get reset when I press X0. So that's how we can use this data register. Either using increment and decrement command, we can store the information permanently or temporarily as we want.